el sueño de enfrentar os subsídios agrícolas, de criar mais equidade no comércio agrícola internacional. Tivemos uma ronda Uruguai com um resultado que nos deu, basicamente, o status quo em questão de acesso a mercado, de subsídios, e estamos hoje aqui já desanimados com a ronda de desenvolvimento, a ronda Doha. Portanto, caminhamos muito pouco em la questão de regras e de redução de subsídios e acesso a mercados. Mas a contrapartida, o crescimento da produção agrícola em nossa região foi muito grande. Muito grande porque também o consumo agrícola foi muito grande. Novos importadores surgiram e esta região estava preparada para atender o crescimento de demanda. E nos parece que nos próximos anos, tendo ou não tendo progresso na OMC, o mesmo continuará acontecendo. Teremos mais demanda que terá que ser suprida por muitos produtores, mas esta região tem um papel fundamental e terá que não só atender a produção, ser de maneira atender à demanda, como ser o que se introduziu nessas 3 décadas, a sustentabilidade. Hoje é uma necessidade, um pré-requisito da produção. Não se admite que a produção não seja sustentável. E a ideia, os 3 palestrantes aqui, falar exatamente desse desafio de produzir mais e produzir de maneira sustentável. E eu tenho aqui 3, não me deram os currículos, portanto, lo conosco há mais tempo do que imaginam, né? Mas então não tenho o formal, mas Rodrigo Lima, o agroícone, um think tank, organização brasileira que já há muitos anos pensa em comércio e pensa em agricultura de maneira muito elaborada e moderna, e creio que sua apresentação vai ser muito interessante. Camila Sande, da Confederação Nacional da Agricultura, a entidade transversal, ele representa os produtores agrícolas, está presente em todos os estados do Brasil, e na maioria dos municípios, com sindicatos, tal, e também acompanha muito perto a questão de comércio e as questões que desafiam o comércio com a sustentabilidade. E Vera Thorstensen, também, né, Vera? Nós outros, então, há décadas, né, antes de Punta del Este, né, professora da Fundação Getúlio Vargas em São Paulo, foi residente em Genebra há muitos anos e entende tudo de comércio, até de agricultura. Mas, por favor, Rodrigo, a palavra é sua.
Okay, thank you so much, Pedro. I will speak in English. Thank you so much for your introduction. Our goal here is to discuss how, thanks, Camila, how sustainable agriculture and international trade can play a role together and build upon what we are hearing since yesterday, all the connections with the Sustainable Development Goals and how to build upon this agenda, considering the case of Brazil. If we look to the SDGs, for instance, there's at least 7, 8, or 9 SDGs that are totally connected to producing food and renewable energy. We're talking about SDG number 1, no poverty, number 2, of course, food security, there's energy security, there's climate change, and challenges towards the impacts of climate change. There's technology, there's innovation, there's a lot of set of SDGs connected to agriculture and then international trade. And if we look to the indicators of SDG 2, that is food security, I would like to highlight 2 distinct aspects. The first one, ensure sustainable food production systems and implement resilient agriculture, because this is something extremely important all over the world. The second one, that is totally connected to trade, it's correct and prevent trade restrictions and distortions in world agricultural markets. This is indicators of the SDGs, and this is totally connected to the whole debate of what is sustainable agriculture and how trade can recognize this and promote this as a win-win approach. But then there's the challenge to define what is low-carbon agriculture or climate-smart agriculture. That is the name internationally agreed. So we can consider soil management to do that, and improvement, pasture management and improvement, the different agricultural systems, adopting good practices, coexisting and being generating more production, sustainable intensification, food and energy security, and then we go to greenhouse gas emissions, mitigation and adaptation, leading to resilience on agriculture, biodiversity, conservation, productivity gains, subsidies comes to this agenda because the more you are able to give subsidy, the more you are able to promote all of those challenges. And technical assistance, natural vegetation conservation, gender issues, technology gaps, land tenure. There's a lot of different aspects that touches upon the concept of climate-smart agriculture. In Brazil, we call low-carbon agriculture. And on COP23 that just finished in Bonn 3 weeks ago, there is a decision on agriculture asking parties to the UNFCCC convention to bring their design, their scope, their view about what is my approach as a country towards low-carbon agriculture, comprising all of the elements I was mentioning. This is something on the agenda because the SUBSTA meeting next year will reconvene with party submissions towards this. So because of that, this is something that is totally connected to the agenda at the climate change meeting, but here at the trade issues and also at the SDGs, we are talking about mitigation, resilience, on agriculture, good practices, improving productivity, and then to have barriers to trade or open trade. If we take a look at the Brazilian NDCs that are the contributions to the Paris Agreement, and when we think about agriculture, there is zero illegal deforestation, which is illegal, right? Full implementation of the new forest code, compensate emissions from legal deforestation, forest restoration, pasture restoration, integration of crop, livestock, and forests. Those are all compromises for Brazil and for the agricultural sector. If we look the forest code, the environmental rural registry, this is something new for a lot of people. This is a rural registry that every producer must do in Brazil. We have now 444 million hectares of areas on the register, accounting to 4.4 million properties, bringing environmental information based on satellite images. And this database shows that we have, on average, 166 million of native vegetation on farms. This is something extremely important because in Brazil our approach is to conserve natural vegetation and to produce. This is by law, right? We have the first forest code from 1934. Okay, there are cases of non-compliance. There is a process going on and that will continue in the next 2 decades. But this is huge in terms of distinguishing what is sustainable production in one country, that is Brazil. And then we have the WTO disciplines governing environmental issues. I'm not going to touch a lot upon this because Professor Vera will come. But there's the Marrakesh Ministerial Decision on Trade and Environment. There's the TBT Agreement, Article 20B, the work of the Committee on Trade and Environment. But I would like to raise some points. The connections, the interrelation of trade and the multilateral environmental agreements. This is my point here with this slide. The Paris Agreement and the UNFCCC Convention, it's a multilateral environmental agreement, and Brazil just come with that contributions I just mentioned, thinking about agriculture and land use. Have this in mind. And then there's the TBT, saying that you can apply a technical barrier because you have an environmental objective. You need to have evidence to do that, some science to justify your measure. There's no discrimination as the general principle. And then there's the code of good practice of the TBT. There's the decision on implementation of all of this. There's the issue of standards. That is, Professor Vera will bring a lot of information about this. But the most intriguing thing for me when it comes to standards is that the TBT mentioned that standards are created by recognized bodies. Recognized bodies, where are these bodies? We're not at the ESPS agreement where we have the codex, where we have the OIE or the International Plant Protection Convention. We have the ISO, for example, but it's different. And there's a multitude of different standards being created and being raised, which can be good, but at the other hand can raise barriers. And when it comes to barriers, I think it's so important to mention this decision of the TBT, because Principles for the Development of International Standards, Guides and Recommendations, adopted years back, because it set some principles that must be followed by members, and non-members also, because members must take care of what non-members are doing inside of their countries. And there's a very curious principle that is, okay, there's transparency, openness, impartiality, coherence, development dimension, but the curious principle for me is effectiveness and relevance. So international standards must facilitate trade and prevent unnecessary trade barriers, and therefore must be relevant and to effectively respond to regulatory and market needs. What is relevant for me cannot be for you. And how to measure this in a tangible way, in a very objective way, and not open space for whatever comprehensions. For me, it's relevant, so I apply this, and this is okay. It is okay or not. This is a very important issue. And then to finish, and connecting all of the Paris Agreement issues I was bringing to another trade agenda, and then to really finish. Under the EU-Mercosur agreement, there's this chapter on trade and sustainable development. And it says that members have the right to regulate its levels of protection, the traditional language of this kind of compromises on international agreements. But then it mentions that international agreements and labor standards must be followed. Okay, so if international agreements must be followed, including the multilateral environmental agreements, we have the Paris Agreement, and Brazil brought to the Paris Agreement some compromises in agriculture. And then if we go to livestock, for example, we go to this. And this is my final slide and question, trying to highlight several issues that I'm hearing since yesterday, and all the SDGs, how trade can help, can promote sustainable development. And we have the low-carbon beef and the role of international trade towards promoting environmental best practices, because we have the commitments at the Paris Agreement, and under the EU-Mercosur, we are committing to comply with what we brought to the environmental agreement, like the Paris Agreement. And then we have grass-fed beef. We have pasture restoration. That's something that is getting bigger, and it will get bigger. It will expand, because it's not just environmentally important. It is socially and economically important in Brazil. We have native vegetation conservation on farms, adoption of good practices, animal welfare practices, and even producers doing integration of crop, livestock, and forests, and ore. So this would be a way to encapsulate and create a model of sustainable meat production. This model that is getting bigger in Brazil helps Brazil to comply with its contributions to the Paris Agreement, but will be recognized, thinking about trade, as a climate-smart agriculture. So I will prefer to buy meat from Brazil, because they are really putting several indicators on the table, and I agree that this is sustainable. I don't know. We have several barriers. We have, despite the tariff barriers, we have a lot of non-tariff barriers, including the environment, including the standards that can say, no, I don't agree with your approach, so let's buy from someone else. So my final point is that our indices, nationally determined contributions, together with the SDGs, how trade should work in this case, for instance. Equivalence could be a way to promote win-win environmental and trade measures. We have equivalence formally at the TBT agreement, at the SPS agreement, how to recognize these equivalence on measures that I do and you want and you do in your side. And standards can promote or raise barriers. This is my final point, and I hope we can have a good conversation about this. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rodrigo. Let me give the word now to Camila, please. Vera will speak before?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem. Let's, first of all, thank you for the invitation. Let us go straight to the point. We have 5 big issues to discuss here. Everybody will agree that agriculture is a huge important area, no question about that. And it is important for Latin America because, well, you know, because you have land, you have sun, you have technology enough to produce competitively. The second point is this. Agriculture cannot live without trade. So we need rules for this trade. You're being producer or being consumers, we need to have rules, right? The point is, okay, we have the rules on the WTO. It is important to maintain the organization because this is a multilateral issue. The third point is that inside these rules, we have to take care of what is being considered barriers. So we have old rules like the TBT code, technical barriers to trade, that include agriculture at the beginning. And so we have, since the origin of the GATT, you have rules to take care of technical barriers to non-tariff barriers. Now, then you have in the Uruguay negotiation, you have a new code. They separate agriculture from specific issues from the TBT agreement to start the sanitary, phytosanitary, because it's specific and because agriculture is really important. So everybody will agree, and what's the big difference inside the ruling of these non-trade tariff barriers is that, well, you are very lucky in SPS, you could agree that you have international standards to compare what you are doing, right? So we have the Codex Alimentarius, we have the Animal Health Organization, and you have the Convention of Plant. Very nice, you have the standards, so you keep it. What happened with the TBT, the technical barriers to trade? Since the beginning of the Tokyo round, the discussion, U.S. and the community cannot agree in what is will be the international standard for this. So we have the ISO, International Standard Organization, we have EAC, but still now the U.S. and the European Union are fighting if these are the only relevant international organization, and the U.S. said, no, we are not going to follow this because we have our own standardization body. So you have a model, mixture of models that is the European Union trying to do this in a way, top-down, and United States up or not. So this is the problem of standards. Everything seems to be more or less understood, but this is not true. Since the beginning of the 2000, a new kind of standards appear. And these standards appear, why? Because they are big wholesaler supermarkets or even NGOs saying, no, we have to protect the consumer. And then they start developing a new kind of standards. And these are what we call sustainability standards. Nobody is against sustainability, no question about this. Nobody is against the happiness of the animals. The question is, who is creating these sustainability standards? So what's the definition? So the definition of sustainability standard is, okay, you have to take care of environment, no problem. You have to take care of the standards of your workers, no problem. Look, we are talking about labor standards, and you have to take care of the animal welfare. Okay, nothing I had against the happiness of my chicken, but the question is, who is behind this standard? And look, for the three of these, okay, environment you have more or less, but for animal welfare and for labor standards, for labor you have the Organization of Labor, right, in Geneva, but for animal it's quite debatable. So my problem with this, being a person who had spent more than 30 years in my life taking care of trade and a lot of years in Geneva, I need rules. I need to have either to negotiate or to have these big rules. And my problem with the sustainability standards is, first, the amount of standards we have already, and I work in Getúlio Vargas, and Getúlio Vargas is one of the platform of United Nations Forum for Sustainable Standards, and you have more than 400 standards already. Then I start, like a professor, I start studying this. Who is creating them? 80%, are you listening? 80% of the standards are created by Europeans. Whoa. Then I take care, okay, for what they are being created, what kind of sectors are affected? Again, 80% food. Wow. Okay. And then who is creating, the countries? Germany, a huge amount. France, Italy, and UK. Wow. Then you go to specifics. Okay, I have students finishing a thesis on the supermarket standards. So we are becoming experts in Walmart and Tesco and Carrefour standards. They are really worried about consumers. Okay, come on. They are really creating their own monopolistic chain of producers, and they are buying it. And the big question is the following. What is the legitimacy of a big supermarket like Carrefour, Walmart, and so on, to create this standard? Who is behind these standards? Now, if you go, and what I'm worried about, I have nothing against standards. My only problem is legitimacy. I am a person of trade. I'm looking for trade barriers, and I want a solution for this problem. Then, as you know, Granada brought this issue, Brazil and other countries, several countries, to discuss this in the WTO. Guess what happened? Immediately, the Europeans and the Americans said, no, this is a private standard. Come on, everything is private standard. ISO is, and no problem with ISO. EISC, no problem. Look, this is not the same animal. One thing is ISO standard and so on. The other thing is sustainability standards, because you have environment together with labor, together with animal welfare. This is not the same thing. I have no problems to have ISO dealing with this. But guess? The NGO said no way, because ISO is dominated by multinationals. Oh, perfect. So let's have a new organization or a new group taking care of these, the rules for these standards, and then creating more than the standards, creating and putting some supervision on the certification process. I am an expert in TBT SPS. I know exactly what's the meaning of certifications. They are costly. Who is behind them? And then you have a kind of the producers, and I know several cases in Brazil, hostage of the certifiers. That is, who is behind the certifications of these labelings? How much they are paying? And this I want to check with you. The answer I got is some kind of $5,000 per hectare. And then when you finish your certification, you have another certifier saying, no, this is not the way the big supermarket wants, let's us do it another certification. So it's become a supermarket of certification. So the question is, again, nobody is against sustainability standards. Nobody is against labels behind this. The only problem is we have to bring this, if you don't like to the WTO because it's private, but again, you have private standards already in the WTO, but the question is who is behind and who is paying for this. So why not to have this kind of discussion already in the WTO, that is the House of Trade. I am participating in several congresses with ICU, with Global Gap, with all of this, and we are doing a huge work on this in Brazil, in Getúlio Vargas. Again, nobody is against, but as a person, as a trade expert, what I need is a transparency for what is behind. And the big question is, we cannot bring this issue to the WTO because they are private. Then you go to the internet and start studying, and you are doing this. Who is supporting these standards? And you have the nice flag of Germany, all the Nordic countries, very well. They are supporting, they are very green, no questions about it. But so the government's there. And to finish, again, the rules. What you have in the TBT-SPS agreement, very clear, very straight to the point. Members are responsible for the standards created by non-governmental organization. So the question is, people that are creating these standards, and this I'm discussing with them a lot, have no knowledge of what trade rules. That's the terrible things. I was in Germany, in Berlin, in the big seminar, and the funny thing, I asked, can I tell me how many experts in trade or with some knowledge of trade rules? No arms raised. Said, well, I am not a sustainable expert, I am a trade expert. And the title, the theme of the seminar was the role of government in sustainable standards. That's a really funny thing. And I said to the ministers and said, look, if I know the role of your government in sustainable standard, I can bring you to a panel because you are responsible for what the NGOs are doing, and because there's a lot of the NGOs in Germany, a lot of them. So this is not to buy a fight in itself. It is to bring the people that is creating and trying to convince people that sustainability standards are important. Yes, they are. And if you do not want to discuss with ISO and the other international organizations, relevant international organization, you have to be another relevant international organization. So must be multilateral, must be transparent. You have to have the rules. You have to say what you are defending, and more than this, who is supervising the certification of the standards? Who is taking money from the agricultures to have these standards? And more than this, who is giving the authorization for the use of label? So this, for me, is the most relevant issue in agricultural trade. That is the spread. Come on, you have more than 500 standards completely without control. And being a person of trade, I can tell you, this kind of sustainable standards without control can really undermine much more one of the most important points of the WTO, that was to have rules for the agricultural trade. Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. Now give the word to Camila, please.
This mic is kind of confusing. Good afternoon. My name is Camila Sande. I'm here for the Brazilian Confederation of Agriculture and Livestock. We represent over 2 million farmers in Brazil. As Pedro mentioned, we are present in Brasilia. Our confederation is in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil. And then you have, we have 27 federations all over the country, and linked to the unions, which become like a system from the municipalities to the central state. So we are very glad to be here in this panel that we are promoting with agroecony, and to bring some discussion, since we are having this ministerial WTO conference here in our home, because we can consider Argentina our home. And so the importance to bring the discussion on the food production that is of responsibility of the region, the South American region, we felt like it was a very big issue to bring to discussion. And before I begin some words, and then I'll leave the room for some discussion, I would like to ask you, how many of you here are following mainly the agricultural issues within the ministerial? Okay, good number. So I asked that because I had the opportunity to be in some committees and some discussions, and I think this ministerial difference from this ministerial to the Bali ministerial and from the Nairobi ministerial is that we are in a very interesting political scenario, which brought us to the discussion of what we can do to make the WTO important to the world, and what I believe that we shouldn't be doing here, because we have to move forward, but it is also a good point because it made us think a little bit about the WTO, its model, and how can we make it better, make more suitable to the new challenge that we have today. And this brings us to the agricultural trade. We are now, I was just with the chief negotiator for the United States, and we were in the same room defending a point that is the main issue and should be the leading issue for agricultural trade, which is science. We try to, with our government, to put on the declaration of, if it comes out, a declaration in this ministerial, this question of the science-based decision that it should, science decision-based to guide agricultural trade. And this is, like Professor Vera mentioned and Rodrigo mentioned, is strengthening the international organizations of reference, such as Codex, such as the World Animal Health Organization and the Plant Protection Convention. And this is much more, because when you have here in South America the responsibility to produce on the eyes of these international standards, which change every day, which are becoming every day more creative, you have to be, you have to have at least some previsibility on what science leads you to do. So we are now negotiating, Mercosur is negotiating an agreement with the European Union, and we are facing this big challenge of telling what we shouldn't be telling, because it's written, as Professor Vera mentioned, in the rules. Science should rule trade, not the precautionary principle, not consumer's choice, not whatever other principle there is that comes in the mind, in the creative minds of, as Professor Vera said, mostly the European Union, but also other countries which are being influenced by the great regulatory agency, which is the European Union, such as our main market, China. China today is following a lot on what the European Union does, especially on GMOs approvals, and this is turning trade along with the uncertainty of the international scenario, very challenging for South America, because we have here all the resources, and I have some experience on trade, but I know people that are a lot more experienced than me, and I heard from a very important person on trade in Brazil this week. You shouldn't be out screaming out and loud that you're gonna fill the world with food produced in South America. This scares people. And I was like, okay, I agree with that, because when you go to the European Union, and I followed these negotiations for 7 years, and you can see fear in the producers, in the farmers' eyes, and they fear the competitiveness of South America, of Brazil. So okay, let's then change the speech. Let's then put out loud there that we can produce whatever the world demands, and with quality and in a sustainable way. So nevertheless, the number of people starving is going up, and we are here, and then along with Argentina, with Paraguay, with Uruguay, with our friends from Colombia, Chile, Peru, we have the resources to produce, and we know how to produce, because we have access in this, I mean in Brazil at least, we have access to innovation, we have access to technology, we have Embrapa to help us. So we are ready to provide this, whatever the world demands of us. And by doing so, and by being ready to do so, we should be able to participate and elaborate and tropicalize these international standards. Okay, we sell, the world buys from us, but the world cannot come to us and tell you should produce exactly like I'm telling you to produce, and then 1 week later it creates another type or another model of production that will, just because they think the consumers want to buy something like this. So whatever the world is expecting from South America as a big food producer, we are ready to do so. But we have to have an environment for this, with predictability, with science, and with participation of our countries, our government, our institutions, such as FGV, such as Agroecony, on the construction of the rules on trade, being the private, being the WTO agreements, being what is suitable for these people that are starving, and these people that we are supposed to attend, not some few people interests on some few countries. So I'll leave it here, this discussion. And I think that if you have some questions, we are here to respond then. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Camila. I think we've heard the three. The challenge to produce more, we know exists. The challenge to produce in a sustainable way, we're prepared. That's what it is. Everybody wants to be done, and that's what we will do. The challenge of having evaluate this on a rules-based system, the issue of standards which have to be stable and have to, like Vera mentioned, have to be transparent. I think that's big issues that we face here. And we come from a region that sometimes is not seen as we see our reality. I think Rodrigo showed very well. I think we have, particularly in Brazil, we have a new 5 years old, but which has forest code, which is very, very strict, and very strict enforcement. And it gives us, few countries have that, which is not known, absolutely not known. It's there. And we still face every day, and now as Camila told, this negotiation with the European Union, they're always, because we have become such a large producer, they seem to try to find some kind of restriction where we're prepared to face these. But we wanted to face these on a transparent and based on science and based on realities, not based on only concerns and lack of information. But I think we have three good speakers that are certainly prepared to elaborate more on questions from the audience. So please, please do, Vera.
Let me give you an example, because we have not so much time. Everybody likes chicken, right? Pojos. Okay. What's going on with chickens? Nestle and other supermarkets decide, come on, they are not saying that they are answering the demand of the consumers, that you have to buy and you have to eat happy chickens. What is a happy chicken? It is a chicken then that sleep during, I'm not joking, during the night. Okay, give me the definition of a night. Go to Brazil, you have the big days. Okay, and the question is, okay, no problem. What is the reason behind the happiness of the chicken? That the chicken must, the number of chickens by square meter, and then they are decided to give you the stamp, the label of a happy chicken, is that they have to sleep at night. What's going on in Brazil? The big productivity, the competitiveness of Brazil is to have a big number of chickens. That is true. They eat with light, with artificial light, and this is the answer you get. So how they are cutting this productivity, determining the number of hours the chicken can sleep. Come on, if this is a health issue for chickens, you have a place to discuss this, the Organization of Health Animal. So, no question, if they decide that the chicken must sleep during 10 hours or so more than this, everybody will do the same. But what they are doing, the Europeans again, is cutting the productivity of the production of South American countries where you have a lot of big productions. Go to the pulp exercise. And this, I was there in the meeting when Walmart said, we are not going to buy diapers made by pulp from Brazil. Why? Because you are developing transgenic eucalyptus. If you understand, if you know about the eucalyptus and compare this with pinus, what is the difference? In Finland and the Nordic countries, you need 30 years to grow an eucalyptus. And if you go to South America, you have, the pinus. And in South America, you have eucalyptus that you can just cut in 5 years if it is modified, genetically modified, and so on. The question is, it is the happiness of the tree, it is what behind? Come on, you are talking about trade barriers. So what's the difference of this? So, and how we cannot have science deciding, or again, and the issue behind trees, the eucalyptus against pinus is old, like trade, and you have behind competitiveness, and you have behind the no rules at all in this discussion. Again, nobody against the happiness of people and animals. The question.
Giving a good tool. The new tool, everything starts with animal welfare. Now we are talking about one welfare. That is the welfare of animals, men, and environment.
Tell me, how many hours a chick must sleep? Come on, this is one of the biggest barriers between Brazil and the European Union. Please tell me, how many hours?
No, it depends. The amount of time, of hours, is related about the needs of the animals. Sure. In my mind, I have a lot of information, but not the amount of time. I apologize. I have not remember. I need to take my phone and ask Google about this information.
This is an issue for the Organization of Animal Health. It's not an issue to be determined by Nestle, Walmart, and so on. That's my point.
No, absolutely.
We have another speaker there. Please, can you take the microphone down the third row? Yeah.
Thank you for very interesting 3 presentations.
Where are you?
Here.
Okay,
here.
yeah.
Vera, I'm here.
Yeah.
This subject, if I can pass a commercial, it will be dealt from a different perspective at 5 o'clock here in this same room. But I want to ask Vera a question. I don't think we will be able to deal with all the sustainability.
You have a definition of red. You have panels about this already. The question is certainly you have international organizations and codex, the Health, Animal, and the Plant Convention, but you have secretariats on this. The point is, if you have any of these organizations, take ISIL for instance, that is transformed in an international standardization body, no problem to deal with ISIL. The question is, we have 520 secretariats, 520 labels, 520 organizations creating rules and certification. Come on, fragmentation of rules, what's this? Pure barrier, a pure trade barrier. So the question is, any international, look at the word, international organization, create one, because if everybody agrees, so, and I asked this to the president of ISIL, why you cannot be the speaker in the name of all these standards?
I go to the SPS agreement, I can raise a measure because I have some foot and mouth disease problem, and I have an international standard to do that, or I will use my standard as a bring the Committee on Trade and Environment work. It's also there, but the Committee on Trade and Environment doesn't have an agreement underneath the committee.
Example, coffee. Do you know how many labels there are for coffee? How many standards? 80. Brazil is a big producer of coffee. Come on, tell me, what's tonic? But certainly it's impossible. So what is behind this? Tell me. Something is wrong, right? Yeah.
Which is related to the solution, how it is facing.
So not for us, but I mean for the academic or the economists, it should be something that that it was already there. I mean, this should be clear now. How is China?
if you were not feeding it to animals to get meat afterwards and you were just eating the plants, it's actually way better. We could feed way more people if we were actually eating and producing less meat. So it's just a comment. I think the point on standards are valid. We need probably to tackle that. But it does not always come from weird protectionism. I think it also comes a lot from the deep care, at least in the EU, about those standards.
Look,
Thank you.
I love animals, no question about this, and
Very good.
it's perfect. Your arguments is perfect, and everybody's ready. But the point is, please put light on this, transparency, and please open the negotiation. Why you cannot accept having a Latin American representative to discuss the animal welfare of the... No problem with this. Bring this to Codex, not to OEE. Bring this to the right place, and then you are going to agree. Everybody will agree, and I will be the first person to sell your standards. Everybody is green. No worry.
Microphone. Oh, please, in the front.
I guess that in Latin America, we may someday develop a tool like in Europe they have. They have several editions of the Eurobarometer on animal welfare.
Yeah.
They make a question to every country in the European Union about a lot of topics of animal welfare. People make sometimes the confusion about animal welfare and animal rights, as I talked previously. No? But they make an excellent tool if you Google that, Eurobarometer, animal welfare, and you can find that. And I always say, why don't we in Mercosur develop some kind of tool about that and offer to the society questions, and they can give us answers. You have in Brazil an excellent academia about this in Jaboticabal, an excellent university, an excellent school with Professor Mateus Paranho da Costa, an excellent professor in animal welfare. We have, the veterinary profession have a lot of answers for almost all the questions about the quality of life and quality of death, no? And are scientific answers for everything. Sure. So don't be worried. I always say the society can ask and we can give the answer.
I would agree with you perfectly every time on both issues that were discussed here, both on animal welfare and both on environmental. On animal welfare, my experience is every time you look closer, we in our region, because we have the space, because we have the temperature, because we have better conditions for the 5 senses. Our production methods are, in average, better, just because it's easier. So I think we should be prepared to show this and guarantee this, because we're ahead. Because we have more space, our climatic conditions are easier. So you look at all aspects of animal welfare, we're better off than the average. Not that we don't have exaggerations on both sides, but we're better off than the average. We haven't not been able to show this. And you go again to environment, the same issue. As Rodrigo explained on his slides here, but because we are in a region that has that Amazon, and we're always looked at something biased against, but if you go to the space, you go seriously, look what's happening, we're better off. We have very good environmental laws, and they are enforced. And we're better off. We can challenge even. But we have not been able to show this in a manner that to convince. And then why we react so much against these protections? Well, if you look on this 3 decades since Punta del Este, very little happened on an organized manner. The Uruguay round gave us status quo. Subsidies were the ones that were there. Market access were the ones that were there. After years and years, they gave us status quo and promised the future. Then we go to Doha, they promise again. And we're here in Buenos Aires to get nothing. So we're kind of, we react because we were unable on these simple issues, because these were the old issues. Subsidies is math. Market access is math, it's easier. Numbers, huh? When you go to animal welfare, it's much more than math, huh? And we're better off. When you go to environment, you go to carbon, also it's more complicated. We're still developing understanding. So these simple issues we were unable to solve. And we pay the cost of it. So we react sometimes ahead of the problem, but I'm quite comfortable. When you look on both issues here, both animal welfare and both environment, come and visit us. We're better off. I don't know if someone wants another question.
Time is over.
Pedro, I would just like
Please, Rodrigo.
I would just like to make a final comment based on what you just said, that but the point is, you mentioned, it's not math, it's science, and there's not a huge amount of knowledge about this. This is being constructed, right? So the point at the end is to qualify what is the animal welfare measures that must be adopted everywhere to have a level playing field and everyone can produce and be okay without this achieving minimum standards. But not just come with some, now there's a Eurobarometer that says something, oh, now the EU is going in this direction because a research with, I don't know, 10,000 people in Europe says this. No, this is not for me the basis of...
No, never happened.
Yeah, no, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. Yeah, they interview thousands of people, and this is the way the EU will follow. This is not the basis for me. The issues must be taken into account, but with scientific grounds and with common understandings and recognition that what I do can reach your level as what you do can reach my level. Pedro mentioned, go to Brazil to see what is animal welfare. We have a lot of standards to this approach. So to finalize, I was supposed to bring a recommendation to the Mercosur countries because I was talking about climate smart agriculture and then inserted something about animal welfare at the end. But we have this deadline next year at the climate change convention to bring our approach towards low carbon agriculture. Brazil will manage to do that, but we will be much stronger as Mercosur to do this as the Mercosur countries. And why not to add the animal welfare issue agenda also, because every time we solve some issue and then comes, now there's this. At the end, the best practice of animal welfare is not eating meat. Just leave the animals alone. This is the best practice for those who are vegetarians or vegans. It is the best practice. But I'm not talking to those guys. I'm talking to the ones who wants to eat meat that has good standards. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for everyone. Yes, I think we've had a good chance to talk about the important issues and difficult issues. We'll certainly continue for the future. Yes. Thank you, the three. Thank you all.
Thank you.